everybody. So I'm making some new terrain tiles for Frostgrave, D&D, Warcry. I got inspired. We had some snow, and I wanted to do like a kind of like snow and slate themed board. And then I've been working on hills and stuff, and I made a bunch of different like hills, but I like these, and then I can like plop them down and use them like that. But I wanted to make boards that had hills, so this was my test piece, and then I scaled up and I made a bigger one, but I'm glad that I recorded this one because I got a lot of good information to share. So these are their panels. It's very lightweight. They're what it is that I was at Hobby Lobby, and then I found these. They're like 1 foot by 1 foot, painting panels. And then they have a frame, and then it's like a piece of MDF that you can paint on. And then they have these 1 foot by 1 foot cork tiles, and I was like, oh, that would be like a really easy way to make a board that would be pretty sturdy, and the storage is an issue for me. Like I have a lot of like Warcry terrain, that I've made and stuff. Okay, but a lot of Warcry stuff that I've made, and then what I do is I put it in a milk crate, and then I throw it in my my Kallax, my IKEA thing, and then there's a lot of this stuff. I made it for Frostgrave and D&D and Warcry and everything, but with Warcry, I got a lot of it, and then but I didn't actually get the terrain cards and the the boards and stuff like that, because at the time GW and I had gone through a really bad breakup, and we're on the mend now because of Warcry. $40 for one miniature? Why is one miniature $40, and then the whole squad of Terminators is $60? Are they fucking insane? Why is the like start collecting box like $90, and then the stupid leader is $40? Are you crazy? What's wrong with you? Why? Because I really like Warcry, but I gave some serious thought to making a Warcry board that would go on my wall, because like a frame thing like this, because a Warcry board is 32 by 20 or 22 by 30, whichever it is, and then I've seen people where they do like a static board and then they throw it up on their wall, and I could do that with these if I wanted to. I'm not saying that I want to like stare at it every day when I walk over to my home office, or whatever, but it is on a frame. But storage is an issue, so I thought about making a giant 20 by 30 Warcry board, and then putting it somewhere upright, storing it upright. But so I really like these guys though, and it uses a combination of foam and then plaster and cork, and it's all just very, very lightweight. So, and then I'm also, like I'm texturing the like foam and stuff, and it's not just like rock molds and things like that. There's other stuff in there too. But anyways, yeah, I recorded everything about making this one, and then what I wanted to do is make some really naturalistic kind of hills where they're either sloped at an angle where I can easily pose guys on top of them, and then like the rocks and stuff, they're easy to pose on, and then they're also not a sharp enough slope where things will slide off, and then the gravel and stuff, and like even the flock kind of keeps them in place a little bit. And then I put try to put the snow in the cracks and stuff, so that when if I'm moving minis around on it, they won't be making traffic, like foot traffic on the actual snow, so it should keep it down, make it last a little bit longer. But anyways, yeah, I'm planning on making a lot of these. So let me know if you guys are interested in this, and if you want to see more of these. I recorded, part of making this one. I haven't finished it yet. But anyways, yeah, let's make some snowy slate kind of tiles for Frostgrave, Warcry, and D&D. So to start with, I'm going to be making some plaster molds, some rock molds, using my Woodland Scenic rock molds. And I like to use a tough casting plaster, and the stuff is really cheap. You get a ton of rocks out of a bag of casting plaster, and the stuff that I use is about 2 parts to 3 parts water. And I like to do all kinds of plaster stuff on laundry day. So I have some Woodland Scenics rock molds. I have some of my own rock molds, or some just random molds that I'm filling up. And I used some of my flagstone molds on these pieces. And then I just keep my Woodland Scenics rock molds around whenever I'm doing a plaster project, and then if there's anything left over, then I'll dump it in there and make some little rocks. And the washer and dryer make great agitators for shaking the little bubbles out of your molds whenever you do a project like this. Just a little hot tip for you. And as soon as the back of the piece of plaster is not glossy anymore, they're ready to be demolded, like 45 minutes to an hour. So my original little test piece was just some pieces of foam that I had, some scrap pieces of foam that I had lying around that I stuffed together. And I wanted to experiment with it and then see if I could just sort of texture the foam by itself, and carve into it and get some like convincing looking stone that way. But what I eventually ended up doing later that worked really well for me was to cut out some shapes where I wanted to put the rock molds, and then texture the areas around them, because the rock molds, they just have awesome texture, and it's tough to copy that. So like my idea was that I was going to have the rock molds sort of sticking out, and then I was going to like use a texture paste or just some sand or something, and then put it down in between the rocks, and make texture and things like that around them, and then I would have the rocks be like dry brushed and painted so that they would show up more than anything else, and then just have some texture sort of around them, filling in the cracks. And I think this works a lot better as a subtractive process than an additive process, where you're trying to glue pieces of foam back on. But mostly I was just going around and trying to like cut off the right angles and make it more of like a natural looking landform. Probably could have started with something that didn't like have a 2x4 shape, but I want to keep the steps going up, but then I want to sort of shave it down and make it look more like a natural hill, but keep it at like 15-20 degree angle sloping up. And I started out using my hot glue gun to put the rock faces down. But like me and the hot glue gun, we have issues. Like it's just, I hate getting burned by that thing. And like the hot glue, it's just not the best glue. I ended up switching later, but like one of the faces came loose, and I was like, this ain't it. This is not working. So eventually I ended up switching to Loctite Stick and Seal, which is like an acrylic based glue. And I knew that it was foam safe because I'd used it on other foam stuff before to put other pieces of plaster on the foam. And it's a really tough glue. It's like the type of glue that you would use to stick tile onto a wall before you put like the tile grout in between. So I knew that was going to work as long as it didn't melt the foam. And since I still didn't know whether I wanted to use the corkboard or not, and then this is just supposed to be my test piece, I still think it looks like a 2x4. I just glued it down to the corkboard without putting the corkboard onto the panel, because I didn't know if I wanted to use the corkboard or not, or use the panels or not, and then do like some MDF on the back of the cork or something, just use the cork. So I was making some little landforms, and the thing about the Woodland Scenics, the molds, is that the little guys are the ones that I always run out of. It's the gigantic ones that I never end up using. So I stuck some of those gigantic rock molds down on the sides to make some big old boulders sticking out of the ground too. And once everything was glued down good, I got to work texturing the foam in between the little cracks. And I really like this. I don't want to be like totally dependent on having the rock molds all the time to use. Like I want to be able to create some other textures and stuff like that. And with practice, I think I could get to where I get something just carving it out of the foam that I'm happy with. But yeah, the rock molds, just they're instant cool texture. But gluing the plaster to cork, you can use super glue, which is super easy. It works great. And then to make a filler paste around everything to kind of glue everything down to, like if I hadn't just tried to texture the foam, if I was going to make some hills with like plaster and stuff, then I wouldn't worry about the hot glue gun not sticking things down very well. But since I'm just making like a little sort of texture paste, I did want to make sure that everything was, glued down really well. So this is how I make this texture paste. I use about 1 part spackle filler, like wall filler stuff, joint compound, 1 part PVA glue, and this is just Eileen's tacky glue. It's just a strong craft glue, and then 1 part sand and 1 part water, and then I mix everything up, and that creates this really nice slurry that has some awesome texture in it, and it's like indestructible. And it's also going to protect all of the foam from spray paint and stuff like that when I take it outside to prime it. And I'm just going to slop that stuff down all over, and it's going to act as like a filler. It's going to kind of glue things down a little bit, and it's just going to create a nice rough ground texture and protect everything, protect all the foam from being used and played on and stuff. And just the only part that I'm really not slopping it on is the rocks. And after I put it on all over the place, then I'm gonna start putting down some chunky kind of gravel stuff. And this is just, I got this from the creek. It's like, but I purposefully got some stuff that's a little bit chunkier. And I have a fine grit sand too, but this is like sort of like more aquarium gravel kind of size chunks. And I'm going to put that down on top in places where I want it, and just put that on top of the glue. And then after I've done that, then I'm going to come in with a finer grit sand and kind of sprinkle that around. And finally, I'm gonna hit everything on top of the glue, my texture layer, with some scenery glue, which is just like really, really watered down PVA glue. And I did something that I wouldn't do again, sort of by accident. I wanted to put down some like really fine grit sand that had been sifted out, and then I put that on top of everything. And I would have done it the other way around. I would have put the scenery glue on top of that stuff, because it ended up like on top of rocks and places where I didn't necessarily want it, and I'm not sure that it was totally sealed down as good as I wanted it to be too. But because everything, well, the cork wasn't stuck to anything, it's a little bit hard to tell. It didn't do it too much, but there's glue on one side and not on the other. So the glue pulls it in and it makes it contract on one side. So yeah, you need to stick it down to something. So Hobby Lobby was having a sale on their canvas, or well, all of their panel things, their canvases, their panels, which is Master's Touch is their brand. And just check, like look on their website. These were half off, so I paid $5 for each panel, and then I got 6 of them. So, and then they also make 1x2s and bigger ones as well. So I like them. I think they're great. So to stick everything down to the panel, I used Gorilla Glue, and you could use any kind of glue that you want for this part. I'm pretty sure that you could just use a strong PVA glue because the cork is pretty fibrous, and then it's going on to a piece of panel. But I ended up changing this too. So if there's a part 2 video, I'll show you the kind of glue that I use for that to do all of this stuff, because I learned a lot from this test piece. And I went around the edges and hit them with a little sanding block too, just to make sure that everything was flush, because I didn't want these boards to go together and have any weird gaps. Then I took everything outside and hit it with some chalky gray finish, sort of a slate chalky gray finish spray paint. And then I hit it with some cheapo craft paint, some dollar store paint. And just wanted to keep it super simple. I wanted the snow to be the real star. So this dry brush though, or this makeup brush that I'm using, is like my new favorite brush for terrain. And it's a flat makeup brush. I think it's called a blush brush, and it does an awesome job on terrain, just like big chunky things, to get a good dry brush down quick. But I'm only going to use that one color. I just want to keep it super simple. And to do some flocking, I used some little static grass tufts that I had, and they look like dead grass. I do have some like dead grass, static grass, but I don't have a static grass applicator. But these guys are they're too big for mini bases. So yeah, I'm just gonna use them for terrain instead. So I did want to put down a little bit of my dead grass, static grass, but I don't have an applicator, so it's not going to stand up straight. But I wanted to put it like sort of in between rocks and stuff, and I want to keep it away from like high traffic areas, because I don't want minis walking on it and sort of kicking it up. And also I really wanted the snow to be the star of this board, so just kind of putting down a little tiny bit, and it actually got mostly covered up by the snow anyways. But to get mine to stand up, I just blow on it. And finally, time to make it snow. So I have some Woodland Scenics snow flock stuff, And I've seen people use baking soda to do this. I wouldn't do that because I think baking soda, it can absorb things from the air. Like it absorbs impurities and stuff. That's why people put it in their fridge to keep it as a deodorizer, and it turns yellow over time. A big old jar of this stuff is like $10. So, it's more than you'll ever use. And then after I put it down, I'm going to use a little brush to just get it off the tops of the rocks, because I do want those to show through, and I want it to look like the snow is sort of blowing in the wind and settling in places. But also I'm trying to keep it towards the center of the board a little bit, because I want to kind of feather out the snow, because I don't want to have to match the flocking with the other boards. So I want the snow to look at sort of like collecting around the hill, and then I also want it to match up with other boards later. And then I'm going to seal everything down with some varnish, and not just because I'm a Vallejo fanboy. This stuff doesn't stink as much, and I'm inside, it's snowing outside, and I didn't want it to blow away all of my hard work. So yeah, I'm just using this stuff in the studio, and it just doesn't smell as bad. Alright, so that's going to be it, you guys. And let me know if I'm gonna be making more. So let me know if you want to see this guy, or like I'm gonna be making like 6 of these, because I want at least a 3x2 to play on for like Warcry and stuff. And I plan on using these if I do Rangers of Shadow Deep, and there's some other stuff that I want to use them for. But yeah, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching, and take care of yourselves until the next time I see you.